I remember Christmas morning like it was yesterday. The living room was bathed in that golden light filtering through our old Victorian windows, and wrapping paper was scattered everywhere like confetti after a party no one wanted to clean up. I was 26, sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor in my pajamas, watching my family exchange gifts with the kind of warm anticipation that only comes once a year. That's when Mom handed me the small velvet box. "This one's special, Brittany," she said, her eyes twinkling with something I couldn't quite read. "It's been waiting for the right moment." I took the box, feeling its weight in my palms. It was the kind of jewelry box you see in movies. Deep burgundy velvet with gold trim. The kind that holds something precious. My heart started racing because I knew what this had to be. For months, Mom had been dropping hints about Grandma Rose's emerald ring, the family heirloom that had been passed down through 3 generations of Cole women. "Go on," Dad urged from his spot on the couch, camera ready. "Open it." I lifted the lid with trembling fingers. Inside, nestled in cream satin, was the most beautiful emerald ring I'd ever seen. It caught the Christmas morning light and threw it back in brilliant green flashes. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. This was it. This was my moment. After years of being the responsible daughter, the one who stayed close to home, helped with family finances, took care of everyone else's needs before my own. Finally, I was being recognized as the true heir to our family legacy. But then I saw the card. Tucked beneath the ring's velvet holder was a small cream card with elegant script. My hands shook as I pulled it out, expecting to see my name written in Mom's familiar handwriting. Instead, I read 5 words that turned my world upside down. "For Michelle, with love, Mom." Michelle. My sister, Michelle, who lived 3,000 miles away in Seattle. Michelle, who called twice a year if we were lucky. Michelle, who hadn't been home for Christmas in 4 years. Michelle, who had made it crystal clear that she wanted nothing to do with our suffocating small-town family drama. I stared at the card, reading it over and over, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. The room had gone quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, could sense the shift in energy from celebration to something darker. "Mom?" My voice came out as a whisper. "There's been a mistake." She looked genuinely confused for a moment, then her expression changed. It was subtle, just a slight tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible straightening of her shoulders. But I caught it. After 26 years of being her daughter, I knew every micro-expression on her face. "What mistake, honey?" I held up the card with shaking fingers. "This says Michelle. The ring, it's for Michelle." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Dad shifted uncomfortably on the couch. My younger brother Tommy suddenly found his phone very interesting. But Mom just sat there, watching me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Oh," she said finally, and there was something in her voice. Relief? Satisfaction? That made my stomach drop. "That's right. I'd almost forgotten." Forgotten? How do you forget who you're giving your most precious family heirloom to? How do you forget to mention that the daughter sitting right in front of you, the one who's been by your side through everything, isn't actually the one you've chosen to carry on the family legacy? "I don't understand," I managed to say, though part of me was beginning to understand all too well. "Well, Michelle is the eldest," Mom said, as if that explained everything. As if those 3 years between us somehow erased all the years I'd spent being the devoted daughter while Michelle pursued her big city dreams. I looked down at the ring again, its emerald surface now blurring through my tears. It was still beautiful, still precious, still everything I'd dreamed of receiving. But it wasn't mine. It was never meant to be mine. And sitting there on that Christmas morning, surrounded by torn wrapping paper and the ruins of my expectations, I began to realize that maybe I'd been wrong about a lot of things. Maybe I'd been wrong about my place in this family. Maybe I'd been wrong about who I really was to the people I loved most. The gift that wasn't for me had just taught me the most painful lesson of my life. Growing up as the middle child in the Cole family wasn't supposed to feel like a competition, but somehow it always did. My older sister Michelle was the golden child, brilliant, ambitious, destined for greatness according to everyone who met her. She graduated valedictorian, got a full scholarship to Northwestern, and landed a job at a tech company in Seattle before most people our age had even figured out what they wanted to do with their lives. Then there was Tommy, our baby brother, 8 years younger than me. He was the surprise, the beloved accident who could do no wrong in anyone's eyes. Every scraped knee was a tragedy, every small accomplishment a miracle worth celebrating. And me? I was Brittany, the reliable one. The one who stayed home for college so I could help with Dad's hardware store when his arthritis started getting bad. The one who moved back in after graduation to help Mom through her bout with depression. The one who never complained when family dinners revolved around Michelle's latest promotion or Tommy's basketball games. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't bitter about it. At least I didn't think I was. I genuinely loved my family, and being the caretaker felt natural to me. When Michelle called from Seattle, stressed about work or her latest breakup, I was the one who listened for hours. When Tommy needed help with college applications, I spent weekends proofreading his essays. When Mom and Dad's marriage hit a rough patch 3 years ago, I was the one mediating their fights and making sure they got to counseling. I thought that meant something. I thought being present, being dependable, being the glue that held everyone together would count for something when it mattered. But sitting there on Christmas morning, staring at that ring that was meant for someone else, I started remembering things differently. Like how Mom always lit up when Michelle called, dropping whatever conversation we were having to take her call. Or how Dad's eyes would get misty whenever he talked about his successful daughter in Seattle. Or how they'd both beam with pride when friends asked about Michelle's career, then give a polite smile when the conversation inevitably shifted to me. "She's such a help around here," they'd say about me, and I always thought it was a compliment. Now I wondered if it was more like describing a piece of furniture, useful, reliable, but not particularly special. The worst part was the way Mom was acting. Like this was completely normal. Like, of course, the family heirloom would go to Michelle, despite the fact that she'd made it clear she considered our hometown beneath her. Despite the fact that she rolled her eyes whenever anyone mentioned family traditions. Despite the fact that she'd literally told me last year that she found Mom's obsession with old jewelry embarrassing. "When will Michelle be getting the ring?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, sometime when she visits. Maybe Easter, if she can make it." If she can make it. Even the transfer of our most precious family heirloom was contingent on Michelle's busy schedule. I looked around the room, searching for some sign that someone else found this as strange as I did. Dad was studying his coffee mug like it contained the secrets of the universe. Tommy had retreated entirely into his phone, probably texting his girlfriend about how awkward Christmas had gotten. "I should get started on breakfast," I said, needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the living room. "That would be wonderful, honey," Mom said, already turning her attention to helping Tommy set up his new gaming console. "You know how we love your Christmas morning pancakes." Of course they did. I made those pancakes every Christmas morning, just like I made Thanksgiving dinner, and Easter brunch, and Dad's birthday cake, and basically every special meal that required any actual effort. I was the family's unpaid caterer, event planner, and emotional support system all rolled into one. But I wasn't the one getting the ring. In the kitchen, I started pulling ingredients from the pantry with more force than necessary. Flour, eggs, milk, vanilla, the same recipe I'd been making for years. My hands moved automatically, while my mind churned through decades of memories, reframing each one through this new lens of understanding. How many times had I prioritized my family's needs over my own dreams? How many job opportunities had I turned down because they were too far from home? How many relationships had I sabotaged because my boyfriends couldn't understand why I spent every weekend at my parents' house? I'd thought I was being noble. Turns out I was just being convenient. The pancakes sizzled in the pan as I heard Michelle's voice floating in from the living room. She was calling to thank everyone for her presents, the ones I'd wrapped and put under the tree because Mom hadn't had time. She sounded bright and happy, probably sitting in her expensive Seattle apartment with her successful boyfriend and her perfect life, completely unaware that she'd just inherited something I'd been dreaming about for years. "Tell her about the ring," I heard Mom say, and my stomach twisted into knots. I didn't want to hear Michelle's reaction. I didn't want to know whether she'd be thrilled or indifferent. I didn't want to find out if she even remembered that Grandma Rose had promised it would stay in the family. But I couldn't avoid it. This was my life now, watching from the sidelines while everyone else got the things I'd always hoped would be mine. Michelle's voice crackled through the phone speaker, filling our kitchen with her trademark laugh. "A ring? Mom, you know I'm not really the jewelry type." Not the jewelry type. I gripped the spatula so hard my knuckles went white. Not the jewelry type, but she was getting Grandma Rose's emerald ring anyway. The ring that I'd admired every time I visited Grandma as a little girl. The ring that Grandma had let me try on when I was 12, telling me stories about how it had belonged to her grandmother before her, how it represented the strength of Cole women through the generations. "It's the family heirloom, sweetheart," Mom explained patiently. "From Grandma Rose. You remember the emerald ring she always wore?" There was a pause. I could practically see Michelle trying to place the memory, probably scrolling through her phone while only half listening. "Oh, right, the green one. That's really thoughtful, Mom. I'll treasure it, obviously." Treasure it. Obviously. Like it was an obligation instead of an honor. I flipped pancakes with more aggression than necessary, trying to drown out the conversation. But then I heard something that made my blood run cold. "Actually," Michelle continued, "would it be weird if I had it appraised? Not because I don't love it, but Jake and I are looking at apartments, and the market here is insane. If it's worth anything substantial." She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. My sister was already planning to sell our family heirloom to help buy real estate in Seattle. "Michelle," Dad's voice carried a warning tone I rarely heard him use with her. "I'm not saying I'd definitely sell it. Just that it would be good to know what we're working with, financially speaking. These apartments cost like $500,000 for a one-bedroom, Dad. Sometimes you have to be practical about these things." Practical. She wanted to be practical about our great-great-grandmother's ring, the one that had survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and countless family upheavals. the one that represented everything about our heritage and history. I turned off the burner and walked into the living room, carrying the platter of pancakes like armor. "Here's breakfast," I announced, my voice artificially bright. "Brittany!" Michelle's voice bubbled through the speaker. "Mom told me you're still living at home. That's so sweet of you, staying close to take care of everyone." Sweet? Like I was a child playing house instead of a grown woman who'd sacrificed her independence for her family. "Someone has to," I said, setting the pancakes down with more force than necessary. "Well, not everyone can just pick up and move across the country," Michelle laughed. "Some of us have to be responsible, right?" The irony wasn't lost on me. Michelle, who was planning to sell our family heirloom for apartment money, was calling herself responsible. Michelle, who hadn't visited home in 4 years, who missed every birthday and holiday, who treated our family like an obligation to be managed from a distance, she was the responsible one. "Speaking of responsibility," I said, surprised by my own boldness, "maybe the ring should go to someone who actually values family tradition." The room went dead silent. Even Michelle stopped talking on the other end of the line. Mom's face flushed red. "Brittany Cole, that's quite enough." "Is it?" I asked, feeling something dangerous rising in my chest. "Because I'm the one who's been here, Mom. I'm the one who helped you through your depression. I'm the one who gives up my weekends to help Dad at the store. I'm the one who makes sure this family stays connected and functioning. But Michelle gets the ring because what? She's older? She's more successful? She's better than me?" "That's not what this is about," Mom said, but her voice wavered. "Then what is it about? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I've spent my entire adult life being the perfect daughter, and the only thing I get for it is the privilege of watching my inheritance go to someone who thinks it's just another asset to liquidate." Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Brittany, honey, you're upset. Maybe we should discuss this later." "When, Dad?" "When would be a good time to discuss how I've been taken for granted my entire life? When would be convenient for you to explain why being a devoted daughter counts for nothing in this family?" Tommy finally looked up from his phone, his eyes wide. I realized he'd never seen me like this before. None of them had. I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who swallowed her feelings to keep everyone else comfortable. "Brittany," Michelle's voice came through the speaker, suddenly serious. "I had no idea you felt this way about the ring. If it means that much to you—" "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't you dare offer it to me now like it's some consolation prize. Like you're doing me a favor by reconsidering whether to sell our family history." I looked around the room at my family. Really looked at them. Dad shifting uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding my eyes. Tommy staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mom with her mouth slightly open, like she genuinely couldn't understand why I was upset. And Michelle's voice floating through the phone, probably sitting in her perfect apartment 3,000 miles away, completely disconnected from the emotional devastation she'd just caused. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about a ring. This was about everything. This was about a lifetime of being overlooked, undervalued, taken for granted. This was about realizing that no matter how much I sacrificed, how much I gave, how much I proved my loyalty, I would never be enough. I would never be Michelle. The next few weeks passed in a blur of forced politeness and unspoken tension. Mom acted like nothing had happened, chatting about New Year's plans and asking me to help organize Dad's 60th birthday party in February. Dad threw himself into inventory at the hardware store, suddenly finding reasons to work late every evening. Tommy stayed glued to his gaming console, emerging only for meals and the occasional grunt of acknowledgement. And me? I went through the motions of being the dutiful daughter while something cold and hard crystallized in my chest. I started paying attention to things I'd never noticed before, like how Mom always asked me to handle the boring family tasks, scheduling Dad's doctor appointments, researching insurance plans, calling repair services, while she bragged to her friends about Michelle's latest work presentation, or how Dad automatically expected me to cover his shifts at the store whenever he wanted time off, but never thought to offer me a real stake in the business despite my 5 years of unpaid labor. It was Michelle who called me directly 2 weeks after Christmas. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Brittany, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "I've been thinking about what you said on Christmas, and I want to make this right." "Make what right?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. "The ring situation. I talked to Jake about it, and we both agree. Family harmony is more important than some old jewelry. If you want the ring, it's yours." I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat. "How generous of you." "Look, I know you're angry, and I get it. But fighting over material possessions isn't going to solve anything. We're sisters." "Are we?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Because sisters usually show up for each other. Sisters usually care about more than just their own lives." "That's not fair, Britt. I have a career, responsibilities." "So do I snapped. "I have responsibilities too, Michelle. The difference is mine aren't optional. I can't just decide to stop taking care of Mom and Dad when it becomes inconvenient." There was a long pause. Then Michelle's voice came back, softer, but with an edge I recognized from our childhood arguments. "No one asked you to sacrifice your life for them, Brittany. That was your choice. My choice." As if I'd had any real choice at all. As if the family hadn't made it clear from day one that Michelle was destined for bigger things while I was expected to stay home and hold down the fort. "You're right," I said quietly. "It was my choice. And I'm starting to realize what a stupid choice it was." After I hung up, I sat in my childhood bedroom. Yes, I was still living in my childhood bedroom at 26, and looked around at the remnants of a life I'd never really gotten to live. My college diploma gathering dust on the dresser. Photo albums full of family events where I was always the one behind the camera, never quite in the picture. A jewelry box with cheap costume pieces while the real heirloom went to someone who saw it as a financial asset. That's when I remembered the letters. Grandma Rose had been a prolific letter writer, especially in her final years when arthritis made it hard for her to get around. I'd kept every letter she'd sent me, storing them in a shoebox under my bed, like some pathetic shrine to the one person in our family who'd ever made me feel truly valued. I pulled out the box and started reading through them, looking for what? Validation? Proof that I mattered? Some forgotten clue about her intentions for the ring? What I found was so much worse. The letter was dated just 3 months before Grandma Rose passed away. Her handwriting was shakier than usual, but her words were crystal clear. "My dearest Brittany, I've been thinking a lot about the emerald ring lately. You know how much it means to our family, and I want you to know that I've always intended it to go to you. You're the one who truly understands what family means. You're the one who stays close, who takes care of everyone else before yourself. Michelle is brilliant and ambitious, and I love her dearly, but she's never had your heart for family. The ring belongs with someone who will treasure not just its monetary value, but its emotional significance. I've spoken to your mother about this, and she understands my wishes. The ring will be yours when the time comes, sweet girl. You've earned it 1,000 times over." I read the letter 3 times, each reading making my hands shake harder. Grandma Rose had wanted me to have the ring. She'd specifically told Mom that it should go to me. She'd seen what I'd always hoped was true, that my devotion to family meant something, that my sacrifices were noticed and valued. But somehow, Mom had decided otherwise. I thought back to Christmas morning, to Mom's expression when I'd found the card with Michelle's name on it. That look I couldn't quite read, it wasn't confusion or surprise. It was guilt, quickly covered by defiance. She'd known. She'd known this was wrong, and she'd done it anyway. I put the letter down with trembling fingers and walked to my bedroom window, looking out at the snow-covered backyard where I'd played as a child, where I'd dreamed of growing up and doing important things with my life. Instead, I'd stayed here, in this house, in this room, watching everyone else live while I serviced their needs. But not anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I felt something that had nothing to do with duty or obligation or what other people needed from me. I felt anger, pure, clean, righteous anger. And underneath that, something even more powerful. I felt done. I made 3 phone calls that night. The first was to my college roommate, Sarah, who'd been begging me to visit her in Denver for years. The second was to the regional manager at Home Depot, following up on a job offer I'd turned down 18 months ago because it would have meant moving away from family. The third was to a lawyer. "I need to understand inheritance law," I told him. "Specifically, what happens when someone's documented wishes aren't followed." Tom Morrison had been Grandma Rose's lawyer for 30 years. His voice was gentle but clear when he explained that while Grandma's letter wasn't legally binding like a will would be, it certainly demonstrated her intent. More importantly, he had copies of conversations he'd had with my grandmother about the ring. "She was very specific about wanting you to have it, Brittany," he said. "I actually advised her to put it in writing in her will, but she said your mother had assured her it would be handled properly within the family." Within the family. What a joke. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked. "Legally? Not much unless you want to create a family war. But morally?" He paused. "Your grandmother trusted that her wishes would be respected. That trust was violated." I thanked him and hung up, feeling the solid weight of validation settle in my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being dramatic or entitled. I had been betrayed, deliberately and completely. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen where Mom was making her usual Tuesday morning grocery list. "We need to talk," I said, setting Grandma Rose's letter on the table between us. Her face went white as she recognized the handwriting. She didn't even pretend to read it. She knew exactly what it said. "Brittany, I can explain. Can you? Because I'm really curious to hear how you explain lying to your own mother on her deathbed and then lying to me for the past 2 years." It wasn't like that. But her voice was weak, uncertain. "Then what was it like, Mom? Help me understand how you decided that Grandma Rose's explicit wishes didn't matter. Help me understand how you thought it was okay to let me believe I was valued in this family while you were planning to give away the one thing that represented that value." She sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than her 58 years. "Michelle is the eldest. That's not what this was about, and you know it." I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "This was about you choosing your successful daughter over your convenient one. This was about you deciding that because I stayed home, because I sacrificed my own life to take care of this family, I didn't deserve the same consideration as Michelle. You don't understand the pressure. What pressure? The pressure of having a daughter who actually shows up. The pressure of having someone you can count on? God forbid that should be rewarded. She started crying then, the kind of tears that were meant to make me feel guilty for upsetting her. But I felt nothing. After 26 years of managing everyone else's emotions, I was finally done. "I'm leaving," I said simply. "Leaving for where?" "Denver. I have a job offer there and a place to stay while I get settled. I'll be gone by the weekend." "Brittany, you can't just—" "Can't what? Can't make decisions about my own life? Can't prioritize my own happiness? Watch me." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and I called Tom Morrison yesterday. Grandma Rose told him about her wishes too. So when Michelle decides to sell that ring for apartment money, just remember that you're not just betraying me. You're betraying your own mother's memory." The look of shock and guilt on her face was almost satisfying. Almost. Dad found me in my room that evening, packing my college textbooks into boxes. "Your mother told me about your conversation this morning," he said quietly. I didn't look up from my packing. And maybe we haven't been as fair to you as we should have been. Maybe. 26 years of taking me for granted, and the best he could offer was maybe. The thing is, Dad, fair isn't even what I wanted. I just wanted to matter. I wanted my sacrifices to mean something. I wanted to feel like I was more than just the family's unpaid employee. He sat down on my bed, looking uncomfortable. "You've always mattered to us, sweetheart." "Have I?" "Because when I look at how you and Mom talk about Michelle versus how you talk about me, it doesn't feel that way. When I see Michelle getting credit for success while I get taken for granted for service, it doesn't feel that way. We rely on you because you're dependable. You rely on me because I let you." I finally looked at him, this man I'd spent years trying to please. "But I'm done being dependable at the expense of being valued." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What can we do to fix this?" I almost laughed. "Nothing, Dad. There's nothing you can do. The damage is done, and honestly, I think it was always done. I think I was always going to be the daughter who stayed home and took care of everyone else, while Michelle got to be the daughter you were proud of. That's not true, isn't it?" I closed the box and labeled it in black marker. "When's the last time you bragged to your friends about something I accomplished? When's the last time you introduced me as anything other than our daughter who helps out around here?" He couldn't answer, and his silence told me everything I needed to know. 2 days later, I loaded my car with everything that mattered to me and drove away from the only home I'd ever known. In my rearview mirror, I could see Mom standing in the driveway, crying. Dad had his arm around her shoulders, and Tommy was conspicuously absent, probably avoiding the drama by hiding in his room. I felt nothing but relief. Denver in February was brutal, but I'd never felt more alive. Sarah helped me find a small apartment in Capitol Hill. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. For the first time in my adult life, I woke up in a space that belonged entirely to me, where no one needed me to manage their emotional crises or handle their responsibilities. The Home Depot job was exactly what I needed: decent pay, benefits, and coworkers who knew me as Brittany, the competent assistant manager, not Brittany, the daughter who never left home. I threw myself into learning the business, staying late to understand inventory systems, volunteering for training programs, building something that was entirely separate from my family's expectations. For 3 months, I didn't call home. They called me, of course. Dad left awkward voicemails asking how I was settling in. Tommy texted occasionally, usually asking for help with something he'd normally come to me for in person. But it was Mom's calls that revealed the most. "Brittany, honey, your father's back is acting up again, and he needs someone to cover the store. Could you possibly—" I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. "Sweetheart, I'm having trouble with the insurance paperwork for Dad's physical therapy. You know how confusing these forms are for me." Delete. "Brittany, please call me back. Your brother's girlfriend broke up with him and he's really struggling. He needs his big sister." Delete. It was liberating, this ability to simply not respond. For years, I'd been conditioned to drop everything whenever someone in my family needed something. Now, I was learning that their needs weren't actually emergencies. They were just inconveniences that other people could solve. But it was Michelle's call in May that changed everything. "Brittany, we need to talk about Mom and Dad." I'd been expecting this call, honestly. I knew eventually someone would try to guilt me back into my old role as family caretaker. "What about them? They're struggling without you there. Dad's been trying to manage the store himself, but his arthritis is getting worse. Mom's been having anxiety attacks again. And Tommy—" "Tommy is 19 years old," I interrupted. "He's perfectly capable of helping out instead of expecting me to handle everything from 1,000 miles away." "But you're so good at—" "No, Michelle. Stop right there. I'm not good at managing everyone else's lives. I was just the one willing to sacrifice my own life to make theirs easier. There's a difference." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I got the ring." "Of course she did. Congratulations." "Mom drove it up to Seattle last weekend. She wanted to give it to me in person." Mom had driven 14 hours to Seattle, something she'd never done before, to personally deliver my inheritance to my sister. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I had it appraised," Michelle continued, and I could hear something strange in her voice. "And? It's worth $43,000. I sat down hard on my couch. $43,000. That was more than I made in a year at Home Depot. That was enough for a down payment on a house, or a master's degree, or a completely fresh start somewhere new." "I know what you're thinking," Michelle said quickly. "And you're right to be angry. This should have been yours." Should have been. Past tense, like it was too late to change anything. "But here's the thing, Britt. I can't enjoy it knowing how much it's hurt you. Jake and I talked about it, and we want to do the right thing." I waited, not trusting myself to speak. "We're selling it and splitting the money. Half for you, half for us. It's not perfect, but it's fair." Fair. There was that word again. The word my family used when they wanted to minimize their guilt without actually making things right. "Keep it," I said. "What?" "Keep the ring, Michelle. Keep the money. Keep all of it." "I don't understand." "The ring was never really about the money," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "It was about recognition. It was about feeling valued by the people who were supposed to love me most. It was about believing that my sacrifices meant something." "They did mean something." "No, they didn't. And splitting the money doesn't change that. It just makes you feel better about benefiting from something that was never meant to be yours." I could hear her crying now, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Brittany. I didn't realize." "That's the problem, Michelle. You never realize. None of you do. You just take and take and take, and then act surprised when I finally stop giving." After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and felt something I'd never experienced before: complete peace with my decision. I didn't want their ring or their money or their guilt-driven attempts at reconciliation. I wanted something much more valuable. I wanted a life where my worth wasn't determined by how much I was willing to sacrifice for other people. And for the first time in 26 years, I was finally free to build exactly that. 6 months later, I got promoted to store manager. Sarah threw me a celebration party at her apartment, and I looked around at the faces of people who knew me as someone competent and independent, not as someone's daughter or caretaker or emotional support system. These people liked me for who I was, not what I could do for them. That's when my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Brittany. His voice was different, older, more fragile. I need to tell you something. What is it? Your mother's in the hospital. She had another anxiety attack, but this one was bad. Really bad. The doctors want to keep her for observation. I felt that old familiar tug, the instinct to drop everything and rush home to fix whatever was broken. But this time, I recognized it for what it was. A conditioned response, not a genuine obligation. I'm sorry to hear that, Dad. Is Tommy helping out? Tommy's not handling this well. He's been acting out since you left, getting into trouble at school. I think he's angry about you being gone. Of course he was angry. For the first time in his life, he was being asked to contribute instead of just consume. And the store? Dad's sigh was audible across the phone line. I had to hire someone to help, but it's not the same. She doesn't know the customers like you did, doesn't understand the systems. Dad. I cut him off gently. Why are you telling me this? A long pause. Then, because I was wrong. We were all wrong. Your mother and I, we took advantage of your good heart. We let you sacrifice your life because it was convenient for us, and we told ourselves it was because you wanted to help. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from him. We know you're not coming back, he continued. And honestly, I'm glad. You deserve better than what we gave you. You deserve a life that's yours. I felt tears starting, but they weren't sad tears. They were relief tears. Validation tears. But I need you to know something, Dad said. Michelle told us what she found out about the ring, about Grandma Rose's letter, about what she really wanted. Your mother. She's been carrying a lot of guilt about that. Good, I said, and meant it. She wants to make it right. How? She liquidated some of her retirement savings. She's sending you a check for $43,000, the full appraised value of the ring. She said it won't fix what she did, but maybe it can help you build the life you should have had all along. I was quiet for a long time, processing this unexpected development. Brittany? You still there? I'm here. Just thinking. The money's not about buying your forgiveness, Dad said quickly. We know we can't do that. It's about acknowledging that we owed you something we never gave you. Respect, recognition, a real stake in your own life. 2 days later, the check arrived. $43,000, with a note in Mom's shaky handwriting. For the life you should have been living all along. I'm sorry it took me this long to see what I was taking from you. Love, Mom. I stared at the check for a long time. It was more money than I'd ever seen at once, enough to change everything about my circumstances. But more than that, it was acknowledgement. It was my family finally admitting that I'd been wronged, that my sacrifices had cost me something valuable, that I deserved better than what they'd given me. I deposited the check and used it exactly the way Mom had suggested, to build the life I should have been living all along. I put a down payment on a small house in a neighborhood I loved. I enrolled in night classes to finish the business degree I'd abandoned to help with Dad's store. I took a vacation to Europe, something I'd dreamed about since college but never thought I could afford. And slowly, carefully, I started rebuilding relationships with my family, but on my terms this time. I called Tommy first. He was sullen and defensive, clearly struggling with having to grow up faster than he'd planned. But after a few difficult conversations, we found our way to something healthier. He started calling me for advice instead of rescue, started treating me like a sister instead of a service provider. Dad and I talked every few weeks now, conversations that were actually about both our lives instead of just family crises. He told me about hiring a real assistant manager, about finally admitting he needed help running the store. I told him about my promotion, my classes, my plans for the future. Mom was harder. Our first real conversation happened 8 months after I'd left home, and it was stilted, careful, full of things we both wanted to say but didn't know how. But gradually, we found our way to something that felt more honest than anything we'd ever had before. And Michelle? We had coffee when she was in Denver for work the following spring. She looked tired, older, like success wasn't quite as fulfilling as she'd expected. I sold the ring, she told me over lattes at a trendy downtown cafe. I know, Dad told me. I couldn't wear it. Every time I looked at it, I thought about how it should have been yours. She paused, stirring her coffee absently. I've been thinking a lot about family lately, about what it really means. And what does it mean? She looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something vulnerable in her expression. It means showing up. It means being present for the hard stuff, not just the celebrations. It means recognizing when someone else is carrying more than their share. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I want to do better, Britt. I want to be the kind of sister you deserved all along. It wasn't enough to erase 26 years of being overlooked, but it was a start. And for the first time since Christmas morning, I felt like maybe we could find our way to something real. That night, I sat in my own living room, in my own house, looking at photos from my European trip, scattered across my coffee table. I thought about the gift that wasn't for me, how it had shattered everything I'd believed about my place in my family, but also how it had forced me to finally see the truth about what I'd been accepting. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the thing that saves your life. The ring had never really been about jewelry or inheritance or even recognition. It had been about worth, about whether I was valuable enough to matter, whether my love was worth reciprocating, whether my life was worth living on my own terms. And now I knew the answer. I'd always been worth more than what I was accepting. I'd just been too afraid to demand it. I picked up one of the photos from Paris, me standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, smiling genuinely for the first time in years, and realized something profound. The life I was living now, this life I'd built from nothing but determination and self-respect, was worth more than any family heirloom could ever be. The gift that wasn't for me had given me something far more valuable than an emerald ring. It had given me myself.